Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to 2026. So happy new year to everybody out there. Today we're going to take a look back at my first full year as a full-time content creator. It was definitely an interesting, stressful, and kind of scary year. We started out with just over 36,000 subscribers and trying to support a family of 4 here on that relatively low viewer count is, well, a little bit difficult to do. So we're going to take a look at what I got up to this past year, what I learned, and we'll talk a bit about how things are going here at the channel. So let's get into it. So the very first video that I put out in 2025 was actually on January 1st, and it was a video where I was thanking you guys for your support. And again, I want to say a huge thanks to all of you guys who have been watching and clicking the like button and commenting and sharing the videos. That makes a huge difference. And of course, a special thank you to all you guys who purchase gear through my affiliate links when I show you something cool that you think would be helpful to you. And of course, a huge thanks to all of you guys who have signed up for my membership program. I couldn't do this without you. It's just that simple. So I was thanking you guys, and I was also letting you know that in 2025 I was planning on putting out a little bit less content. My plan now is to basically just sort of slow down just a little bit. I think it should make the videos that you guys are getting a lot better, at least I hope so. I think it should also really help me calm down a bit, and as much as I've enjoyed doing this over the last year, I've noticed that my morale has really kind of started to go down, and I think that is just because I'm putting so much pressure and stress on all of this, and I certainly did end up putting out a lot less content in 2025 than I did the previous year, 2024. I put out about 70 videos over the course of 2025, and 2024 was basically double that. While you would think that that would mean that my views got cut in half because I was still adding a decent amount of subscribers and have a great base of subscribers. Huge thanks to you guys out there. I still got 1.9 million regular video views opposed to the 2.2 million the year before. And I guess when you're talking millions, that is still a decent chunk, but not really that big of a decrease considering the output from the channel was cut by about 50%. Of course, the sort of stress levels still ended up being not that great since I knew that I'd be making less money, and we are basically just barely scraping by. I didn't take this leap because I thought it was going to be incredibly lucrative. I knew that things would probably be pretty stressful and hard the first couple years. I definitely wish that I was in a better spot now, but I still feel incredibly blessed to be able to do this. I just really hope that I can continue, and it does seem like we're still adding a decent amount of subscribers. I started the year with 36,000, ended with 43,000. Those are rounded numbers, so that means I gained somewhere around 7,000 subscribers, which is only about 1,000 less gained than the year before. So huge thanks to all you guys, and welcome to the channel. I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing and you stick around. I would eventually like to get more than one video out a week. I think the problem is when I give myself a week or more than a week and working on so many different projects, I end up sort of, well, taking a little bit more time on videos, polishing them when I probably shouldn't be. It kind of reminds me of something that a manager at my old job would say, and that's that if you wait to the last second, it only takes a second. And I've really noticed that if I give myself a huge amount of time to do something, I will just continue to work on it and polish it until it's absolutely perfect. And I think maybe that would be great if I was doing something else, but for YouTube content, I think I've really got to relax a bit in the next year. So I'm going to try to do that, but it's really pretty hard for me, to be honest. The very first ride that we took in 2025 was up to my dad and I's kind of favorite bird hunting spot that we used to spend a lot of time at when I was younger and actually had time to hunt. He rode the DR650 for the majority of the time, or I guess tried to ride the DR650, and I had the 701 Enduro, which also proved to be a little bit difficult, especially with the rather unexpected conditions that we found up there.
We got the studs on here too, right?
No, that's what I was just saying. We do not.
No.
I was thinking we were gonna maybe need them, and I was thinking it's about time to put them on, but then all of a sudden winter disappeared. But it's looking a little more winterish up here now, especially around this next corner.
Ben's putting his feet down.
Yeah, this is skating. Yeah, you won't catch me up on the...
Oh, boy. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, you won't catch me on the pegs when there's ice, that's for sure. Ooh, this will be interesting.
Oh, Ben.
if you can see the end of this trail, this is the end of where trucks are going to be able to drive. So
Sure. All right. I'm just going to sit here for a little bit.
taking a break.
Yeah. Compose myself a little bit. You know, enjoy nature. Try to get moving again, and I'm not going anywhere. I guess stopping was not the thing to do. Yeah, I'm not moving. Oh, crap.
I can give you a push and some traction to get going.
So definitely a bit of a rough start to the season and certainly a slippery start to this ride. We did eventually find some trails that were completely clear, so we were no longer skating but actually riding, and the video turned out fairly well. However, when I went back to review it on my big screen TV after it was released, I realized that with the way my dad sort of leans into the handlebars on a bike and sort of hangs his head quite a bit lower than I do, mixed with the fact that our cameras are of course 6 inches lower than our actual eyesight is, all you could really see from his camera's perspective was that giant dark windscreen, which I think I just didn't like in general. But because I had gotten some comments from somebody who had said that they had taken the idea that they had seen in my videos years ago when I had the Gen 2 KLR, they put the same KLR dash and dark and double bubble windscreen on their bike and then almost hit a couple deer when they were riding around at night because they were trying to look through the screen. And of course, you should never look through a windshield if you don't have to, and you certainly should never look through a darkened windshield at night. And of course, I know you guys are in charge of your own safety. It's not up to me to keep you guys safe, and it doesn't matter what I put out or what anybody else puts out on the internet, but this really just kind of got under my skin, and I started to put the weight of the world on my shoulders, and it really has just started to make this job, well, a lot less fun, which, let me tell you, really, really sucks, especially since I've been looking forward to this and trying to get to this point for the last decade now, so it really kind of sucks. And that's why one of the very next pieces of content that I put out was me removing this windshield and GPS bar. I basically just kind of explained that I decided darkened windshields were not something that I was going to run on my bikes anymore for the reasons that I just explained. And I talked a bit about how I did really like the GPS bar setup aside from the darkened windshield because it was able to be removed so easily. And apparently this is kind of a hot item and something that a lot of people are interested in. I don't think I've ever gotten so many questions about a single thing that I've done to any of my motorcycles over the entire time that I've been making YouTube content as I have this GPS bar and windshield. But unfortunately, even though I would love to be able to give you guys an affiliate link to the option with the clear windshield, of course, the company that makes them no longer offers any variation of it, which is really sort of disappointing since it's now a part of the channel and a part of the build, and I invested money into it thinking that I would possibly be able to make at least some of it back through the affiliate links. So really kind of a disappointing thing all the way around. Next, I got to work on the Honda XR650L Adventure build, taking it to the luxury level with some accessories from Tusk, like the grip heaters and the seat heater, as well as their lithium-ion battery and compact wire harness. I did also put their tachometer on the Hemisphere Off-Road Rally dash that I've got on the bike, but that never seemed to work quite right on that machine. No matter what setting I would put it on, it always read way higher of an RPM than that motor could possibly have been at. It seemed to work fine on the DR650, so I'm not sure exactly what's different about the spark system on the XR compared to the DR, but I definitely wouldn't recommend the Tusk tachometer for the XR. I did also put a little voltmeter right next to that on the dash, which ended up being really important since the first ride that I took it on, when I had all the accessories turned on, including the auxiliary lights that I've got on that bike, it ended up dropping the battery's voltage as I was moving, unless I was moving at a pretty good clip. And it seemed like even then, sometimes I was losing voltage. And I did run into an issue, I think a couple days later after I'd parked the bike after that ride, and it had been kind of cold, and it didn't happen since all summer. But the battery wasn't charged enough at that point to start the bike. And I did find just actually last night, now that it's been cold and I haven't been running the bike for a while, I think it probably sat for at least a month since I started it. And it's definitely been a couple months since I've had it out on the road. But I found just the other day that when I went to start it, the battery didn't have enough juice. And because I have the dip switches in the position on that where none of the accessories should be getting power when the bike is off, they only get power when the key is turned on. I don't think that it could be the same issue as I've had with the DR and the 701 Enduro, which both do have accessories that are wired directly to the battery, and I think have a parasitic draw, which has been causing the issues on there. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I'm certainly not an expert on lithium-ion batteries. I have heard some concerns from you guys saying that putting a lithium-ion battery in a bike with an old charging system like that could possibly cause some issues. Again, I haven't really noticed any issues other than the ones that I've explained. Maybe the batteries are losing some of their life because of that charging system. I don't really know. I mean, really any battery you put in a bike, you should have it on a tender if it's going to sit, as long as my bikes end up sitting. As far as the rest of the accessories, though, the grip heaters are just an absolute necessity if you're going to ride a bike in cold weather. I just love having grip heaters. I do not like riding bikes without them anymore. And honestly, the seat heater is really a very, very nice thing to have, especially on a cold day. And for somebody that doesn't ever ride in the cold, obviously it's not something that's going to be important to you. But man, if you are, they are some of the nicest accessories that I've ever put on a bike. Let's see, what else did we get up to here? Actually, before that video, I made a video talking a bit about my experiences and things I've learned about inner tubes for tubed tires over the years. We talked a bit about the announcement that Kawasaki made that they were going to be bringing back the two-stroke, which they still, I don't think, have said anything about since, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. I made a video about the baby 450 GS, which is now released, I believe. We compared the KTM 390 Adventure R to the KLR 650 and talked a bit about whether or not I should buy that bike. And then after that, we did actually get to take the Skidoo Freeride 800 out for a cruise, and I talked a bit about whether or not switching back to a two-stroke after riding a four-stroke was something that I was happy about. I definitely love that sled and really wish that I would be able to ride it a bit more. I did also take that sled out and tried some new skis from C&A Pro along with some wear bars that they sent me, which definitely cleaned up the handling of that sled and made it a lot better to ride. And somewhere in there, I also made a video reacting to the release of the MSRP for the 2025 DRZ4S, and in that video I said that I was not going to be buying that bike because of the rather high, or higher than expected, sticker price on it. Spoiler alert, later on, of course, I bought the DRZ4S and I'm now testing it. I also made a video in there talking a bit about how I thought the DRZ4S wouldn't quite be as great of an adventure bike as the DR650, and if you guys have been watching the videos, you know that I've actually been out testing that and have made some content on it. I also made a video talking a bit about how, while I was excited to see the new lighter, smaller, entry-level adventure bikes like the CF Moto Ibex 450 and the KTM 390 Adventure R, I wasn't really sure, and I was actually pretty confident that they weren't going to be great bikes to learn dirt skills on, or first good off-road bikes. So if you're thinking about one of those bikes, or really any other more aggressive off-road bike for your first machine, I would highly suggest checking that out and rethinking your options. Next, I sat down with the Honda XR650L and the DR650 to talk a bit about how I was feeling about both of those machines, since I had had a full season riding and comparing both of them. That actually turned out to be, I think, the most popular video of the year, definitely by far the most popular new video of the year, and ended up being something that really kind of gave me a bit of a confidence boost, since back when I had decided to take this full time, I had basically gambled on those machines being something that you guys would be interested in enough, and that new viewers would be interested in enough to want to follow the channel. So that was definitely kind of cool, and I'm certainly happy to be able to give bikes like that some much needed and much appreciated, from the way it sounds, attention here on YouTube. So huge thanks to all you guys that have subscribed, now that you've realized that there is somebody out there making content on these old dinosaurs. And then, since things were starting to warm up outside a little bit here in Wisconsin and the roads were starting to clear off, I decided to work on the DR650 a little bit, putting the original GPS bar back on, along with the CarPride W702 Pro navigation unit, or CarPlay unit. And then I actually sort of retrofitted the Tusk universal windscreen after cutting the sides down, so it would clamp onto the GPS bar instead of clamping onto the handlebars, which actually ended up working pretty decent and looked okay.
Oh, these bikes make a good sound, don't they? A beautiful spring day for a ride, too.
Next, we took the Honda XR650L adventure build out on more or less the exact same loop that I had taken it out on the year before when it was basically stock. Of course, since then, we had stuck the Tusk Waypoint tires on. I had lowered the rear an inch and the front 3/4 of an inch, and mounted the Hemisphere Off-Road Rally windscreen / dash, which of course gave me that awesome place for the Car Pride W702 CarPlay unit. And during that ride, I noticed that I really liked the bike in the new lowered configuration a lot better, both out on the road and off-road.
Yeah, this is just a perfect bike for this, though, man. It climbing up those hills and doing all this, kind of hairy stuff. While I'm certainly not recommending it, especially when it's snowy and when you're by yourself. But, I mean, having this 346-pound bike, which of course has a little bit more weight on it now with the mods, just is vastly better than the 460 pounds that my last Gen 3 KLR was, and even the 430-pound Gen 2.
I did notice towards the end of the ride that I was feeling a bit fatigued and sort of uncomfortable, and I couldn't quite place it. But now, at this point in time today, with some other modifications made to that bike, I have since figured out exactly, I think, what was going on there, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And then it was time for my brother's wedding, which meant that my wife, my 2 kids and I, and my parents, along with way more strollers and baggage and car seats than we could possibly carry, boarded a plane and flew to Nashville, Tennessee for 2 weeks. So I needed to have some sort of content ready, and thankfully my dad had taken one of my cameras on his epic trip on my old Tenere 700 when he had gone out west the previous year. So I furiously edited through all of that in, I think, about a week. And if you guys haven't seen it, I did put all those episodes together and sort of mixed in some music for the traveling portions of it and turned it into what we think is really an awesome adventure film. It's almost 2 hours long, and if you're feeling a little bit gloomy with the snow or cold weather in the wintertime right now, it would definitely be a nice sort of escape from that climate, and you'd be able to see the beautiful mountains and Beartooth Pass and all the other awesome places that he took us. So huge thanks to him for making the trek out there and testing that bike out for us. If you guys did see those videos, you might remember that he wasn't really very happy with the sort of comfortability of that build, and he swore that he would never take it out west again. However, after he watched the videos, he sort of changed his mind a bit, and now just this past summer we made a few modifications and he took it back out west and actually had a great time on it. So be looking forward to those videos. I have not edited them yet, but I'm pretty excited to do so, and I think I should probably be getting to that at least sometime soon. And then once we got back from Nashville, it was e-bike season, so a Rusher sent me their Rover, which was a 52-volt full suspension e-mountain bike. So we took that out on the pavement to do a little bit of a test ride. And my favorite thing about testing these e-bikes is the fact that I don't have to travel an hour to get off-road, which is really the whole reason that I started dual sport motorcycle riding to begin with. I just love being off-road in the woods, and these e-bikes make that so much easier. And then I put a video out comparing the DRZ4S to the KTM 390 Adventure R, since those were the 2 bikes that I was sort of trying to decide between. I liked the 390 Adventure R because, at least on paper, it seemed like the sort of sport bike-ish feeling adventure bike that would still do a pretty decent job off-road that I had kind of always been in search of. And the DRZ4S was, of course, the reincarnation of the first dual sport motorcycle that I had ever ridden, and it was one of the most popular dual sport motorcycles ever made. And then we took the DR650 out on the adventure test loop to see how the new modifications that I had made would compare to that same ride that I did last year and to the same ride that I had just done on the XR650. Both bikes at this point now had 14-tooth sprockets, so I was interested to see how they'd handle the high-speed roads, and I definitely noticed that there were some differences.
I would say it seems like this definitely still has a bit more go to it. The XR hits a lot harder and accelerates much more quickly at lower speeds, but once you're above 45, 50 miles an hour, the DR still is kind of picking up some power yet, where The XR, you're at the top end of it a lot.
The other thing that I noticed that I still liked more about the DR650 was that because of its much lower center of gravity compared to the XR, even though the XR was now lowered this year, is that it just felt a lot better on the corners, and that also gave me a lot more confidence off-road. I actually ended up taking it down a trail that I decided not to take the XR on, and that certainly provided me with some good testing opportunities.
Whoa! That was a little bit mushier than I anticipated.
And even though its stock suspension and throttle response leave a lot to be desired, it's still gotta be one of the best lightweight adventure bikes that you can buy, and is really something that I've been enjoying testing.
I gotta say, so far, I've really been enjoying riding this bike today. More than the XR650? No, I don't think so. XR just, I think because of the suspension and that throttle response, just feels a little bit more fun. But I would definitely prefer this bike out on the pavement.
However, I did notice that the much more off-road oriented D-Sports on the high-speed paved roads did start to get a little bit annoying towards the end of the ride.
Yeah, right at like 60 on the dot, or indicated on the gauge anyway. It's pretty noisy, which may be just that it's, like I mentioned at the beginning, starting to come. So definitely something to consider. The waypoint so far has been much quieter.
Next, Rocky Mountain sent me some specialty tools and some bearings to rebuild the spare set of wheels that I got with the Honda XR 650L. Hey, look at that!
Ooh, silky smooth.
TST also sent me their R002 e-bike to test out, and that bike was one of the most fun bikes that I've tested. The motor on it is just so snappy and it wheelies so easy. It's just such a fun bike to ride.
It's kind of like almost a cross between a moped and like a little, I don't know, I guess like 70s dirt bike. They are just a blast when they're torquey like this.
However, shortly after I posted the review, I was tearing around the yard here and something snapped off inside of that snappy motor, and during the test ride I did run into some sort of issue where I had left the ground and then come back down with the wheel sort of under power, and it gave me some sort of error, but then just kept on moving, where now something is definitely broken loose inside of that motor and it just doesn't go at all. The positive side is they did send me another one, and I haven't had time to put it in yet, but I would say it's probably still a decent option as long as you're not planning on using it like a BMX bike, or at least maybe a little bit more careful than I was about not coming down with the wheel under power. We also stuck a new adventure style windshield on the 701 Enduro, which caused me to sort of relocate my Speedo CarPlay unit that they had sent me to test a while before then. I also sort of changed up where the brake line and ABS cable were, which later on ended up causing me some issues. It actually sort of started to chew through the brake line, so definitely be careful anytime you're moving anything around any of your cables or wires. After that was done, I brought the bike up north and took it out for a nice long test ride to sort of talk about whether or not I felt like the 701 Enduro was a good investment for the channel, since at first it kind of took a while for any of the content that I was putting out on it to gain traction, but now it's actually really started to pick up, and it really, I think, is a good bike to have around when you're testing 650 class bikes, because it is, I mean, kind of the top of the line bike that you can get, albeit maybe not the most reliable, but definitely by far the most fun. I also did a video comparing the MSR Explorer and Voyager gear. Rocky Mountain had sent me them years before, and since I had a couple seasons on them, I wanted to share why I basically always wore the much more expensive Explorer gear in comparison to the Voyager. And then it was time to unveil the new test bike for 2025, the DRZ4S. We also took that bike out for a nice long test ride and did get pulled over since I had just picked it up from the dealer and didn't have a plate on it yet.
Is this a cop? What is going on? Am I getting pulled over?
Which ended up being kind of a fun interaction with the sheriff's department.
It's the sheriff. We're going to get a visit from the sheriff. I'll ask if they want to be on YouTube.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad.
Do you want to be on YouTube, or should I shut my cameras off?
It don't matter.
Really? Oh, cool. Thanks. I appreciate that.
No worries.
That's awesome. Do you mind being on YouTube?
No, it's fine.
No? Cool. All right. I suppose you want to know why I don't have a plate, huh?
Yeah, that's the only.
I just picked it up yesterday. I can get the paperwork out if you want to see it.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah.
What are you filming for? Just your channel? Or?
Yeah, I do this for a living.
Really?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that's a pretty sweet setup. That whole, that's pretty sweet.
Thank you. Do you mind if I step off?
Absolutely. Go ahead. So is this a channel that you have on YouTube?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
how you're... Okay.
I've been doing it full-time for a little bit over a year now, like a year and a half or so. But I've been making videos for like 8 years. Everything all good?
Yeah.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. Well, thanks, guys. Stay safe out there. Good talking to you.
What's your channel name?
Swanky Cat.
Swanky Fat?
Swanky Cat.
Swanky Fat.
Yep. It's a weird name, I know. I have a cat that has no tail and lays down and drinks water, and I always called him Swanky Cat. And then I decided that'd be a good name for a channel for some reason. And that was before I ever decided what I was going to do with it. So now I'm Swanky Cat. So whatever. You too. Thank you. What a nice bunch of guys.
Also put out an engine-only sound ride on the 4S, and it seems like those videos do really well for some people. They never seem to do very well for me. I'm not really sure why. At that point in time, I had also finally gotten around to editing the first Redneck performance mod series that we did on Jason's DR650, where he was trying some, well, questionable methods that he had found online.
I read one guy on the internet drove it to a 1.5 and had luck with it. So we're going to try it and see what happens.
And then for 5 days in a row, we took the DRZ4S out just to sort of get acquainted with the bike, talk a little bit about how I was feeling about it and just life in general, I suppose, and also to get as many miles on it as I possibly could.
Yeah, it feels, I would say, pretty darn nice out here. Definitely easy enough to get the wheel in the air.
And since I had spent a decent amount of time on that bike, I decided to take the XR650 out and give you guys my thoughts on how the two compared.
I really thought when I got back on this bike that it wouldn't feel that different in comparison to that one, but boy does it. I mean, the difference between the XR and the DR, like I've said before, is that the XR always seemed like it was the one that was really just had the punchiest power. As soon as you twist the throttle, it was just off and running, and that is sort of how the torque curve looks. And I thought that was a deer. Because of that, I really can't believe how, sorry fellow XR650L owners, how doggy this feels in comparison. And I mean, it still has a lot of power. I mean, it's still a very, very fun bike. This shouldn't detract from anything that I've said about this bike in the past, because it is an amazing bike. I love the Honda XR650L, but man, that 4S, even though it's about the same horsepower, I suppose, like I said, because of the EFI, because it's, what, 15 or so pounds lighter, and granted it is, well, quite a bit more expensive, it just, it feels just so much more lively.
And then my dad and I took the DRZ4S and the DR650 adventure build on a pretty decently long adventure ride up to some awesome trails up north.
Yeah, this is not going to be real comfortable.
Yeah, this is so much more comfortable to ride, isn't it? Just the whole ergonomics of it.
This has got more pickup than that's got, though, huh?
Oh yeah, a lot.
Seems like it's got the quickest response of any bike I've ever been on as far as hitting the throttle.
Yeah, it really just, the power is just always right there. It's so
yeah,
nice.
it really is.
And not too long after that, we did more or less the same thing with a different set of bikes and a different set of trails. We took his Tenere 700, my old bike that I had put together and then sold to him, and the 701 Enduro, which is sort of the bike that I picked up to kind of replace the sort of fast new bike that I had in the garage that I was testing.
I feel like I'm going to die on this.
Well, just don't twist the throttle too much. These bikes actually have about the same horsepower, but this one weighs, well, 460 without all the crash protection, and that weighs 345-ish or something like that. Ooh, I do miss how easy that, whoa, look out, chipmunk! I do miss how easy that back end slides around on this thing.
Yeah, that's
like,
nice.
It's like a, I don't know, it's like drift assist or something. It's just
Drift assist?
blip, yeah, you just blip the throttle and it's just, you want to go around the corner sideways? Sure, why not? We can do that.
And then I made a modification to the XR650L, which by far has been the biggest improvement, I think, to either of the builds. And that, of course, was the Hemisphere off-road windshield. It provided an awesome clean air pocket, and I realized that that was sort of what was missing on that bike from the adventure test ride earlier in the season, where I said that I'd gotten kind of fatigued by the end of the ride. I noticed now with the windscreen in the upper position, or even in the lowest position with me sort of ducked behind it, it really just makes that bike much more tolerable to ride on much longer rides. Originally, I'd kind of thought maybe it was just the sort of raw feeling of the engine through the lack of a cush drive, I suppose, but it seems like it was really a lot more about my helmet just sort of constantly getting shook around by the buffeted wind coming off of the top of that rally windscreen without the windshield on it.
Gets me a little bit of buffeting way up here here. But I mean, that's almost uncomfortable to sit that high. So I mean, I can pretty much scoot to the back of the seat. And I mean, this is just an absolutely beautiful place to be. It does maybe change the handling just a tad, just because there is so much fairing up there. If you want a rock solid smooth cruiser to do 70 miles an hour plus on the freeway with, I mean, well, then you should buy an adventure bike, not a dual sport. It's just not what you're gonna get. But man, I gotta say, I mean, this makes this thing incredibly comfortable. I mean, it's probably almost as good of wind protection as I had on the Gen 3 KLR, which is, of course, kind of what I'm trying to do with these bikes, is get somewhere near that level of on-road comfort. And with the scoops on the side that are supposed to scoop air into the engine and over the cooling fins, I mean, it really has almost as good a wind protection. Certainly not as good because you don't have the side fairings, but I mean, this is almost exactly, I mean, I suppose it is exactly what I was going for.
We also then released the second installment of the DR650 Performance Build Series, which is, of course, Jason's bike. And then we took his highly modified DR650 and my, well, adventure modified DR650, which is stock more or less from a performance standpoint, other than the 14-tooth sprocket, which Jason's bike also has, up for a extended off-road adventure, which was really just a very, very, very fun day. We did start to notice what I think is maybe just a little bit of a deficiency with the Tusk D Sport in comparison to the Pirelli MT21 that he's got on the front of his bike. It may also have something to do with the fact that my bars are a little bit higher than his, but with the same exact rear tire, we were definitely noticing that it seemed like the MT21 on the front of his bike would track much better through the deep sand in comparison to the D Sport on the front of my bike.
I feel like I can tell your front, boy, yeah, just, I don't know, it just feels so different.
Do you want to switch back?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, let's switch. Yeah, I don't feel near as confident on mine.
Yeah, I think I do feel a little more confident on this one. Like, it doesn't seem as squirrely, a little more relaxed. I mean, I only went straight on both bikes, but I haven't really felt this slip like at all, whereas that one I thought did.
Which was really kind of an eye-opening experience and has made me think that the next front tire that I put on a bike is probably going to be an MT21. And after that adventure, Jason filled up and realized that some of the questionable mods and tuning methods that we had been using weren't really getting his bike where he wanted it.
And it's kind of funny how this project went kind of full cycle. Like, it's not even that I wasn't like able or willing to spend the money on it. It was more of a like, can I do it thing, like, let's grind the needle, let's drill a hole, let's drill the jet, let's figure it out. And then kind of gave up on that. I was like, all right, let's just get it right. The way that we are hoping to do that is with this cheap Amazon gauge that my buddy Bill introduced me to. We got 1 7/8 IED pipe, which actually fits perfectly onto the outlet on this Lex slip-on. Drilled a hole with a step bit. I got this clamp-on bung. You can see the inner pipe, which is actually the outlet, and then how the sensor actually does sit in that stream. So when you first turn it on, it actually reads volts. So there's my voltage, 12.2, and then this is a heated sensor. It's gonna heat up, takes a little while, and then it starts reading AFR, or air fuel ratio. What that equation is it's parts of air or oxygen divided by parts of fuel or the hydrocarbon of the gasoline. So a high number means you're lean. The numerator, the air portion, is high. As you go richer, the number is going to drop because your parts of air is lower than your parts of fuel. So you're end up with, like, say, 1/2 instead of 2/1.
We did a few test runs to sort of get that dialed in, and then took the bike out for a nice long ride, and it got much better mileage, and now really seems to perform a lot better.
Moment of truth.
Any guesses?
40.
40? $49.6.
I'll take it.
That's about exactly I think what mine got last time I checked. Not bad.
Yeah, it's a lot better.
Well, that's a result, huh? Nice. Now you can take your old setup off here, but it
Yeah.
won't look as unique anymore.
No, people definitely look at it.
Yeah, I bet. If you had any questions about it or not?
I don't think anyone ever asked me anything about it, but like I've parked at places and had people like walking by it, like, what is going on?
What is that?
Also took the XR650L out for a night ride to talk a bit about why, even though, like I've said, the DR650 is probably the best lightweight, inexpensive adventure bike to, or I guess dual sport to modify into an adventure bike out there, but the XR is still just kind of my favorite. And we also talked a bit about the creator of the universe, and I talked a bit about how in the last couple years, while I've, I suppose, always technically been a Christian, I've really sort of grown in my faith a lot, and I think that's sort of purposeful, not on my end, but on God's end. That's why I think I've kind of been struggling so much in the last couple of years and making some pretty incredible leaps and bounds and realizing a lot about myself. And I don't know, life is just definitely hard, but getting much easier and, well, has a lot more meaning, I suppose. So we talked a bit about that on that ride, and I've mentioned a bit about that in other rides, and I know a lot of people get sort of nervous when you start to talk about that sort of thing, and I suppose I was in that position at one point in time, but it is something that I think a lot of people don't really completely understand and would rather just avoid it than actually do any research on it. And I would highly recommend, if you have not read through the Bible, that you give that a shot, and I think it will make a big difference in your life. Next, I released a video that I'd filmed after Jason and I were out on the DRZ4S and the DR650, and it talked a bit about how that bike did on the high speed roads as well as out on the freeway. And I was really pretty impressed with how smooth that bike was, even at 70 miles an hour, but especially at 60. It's one of the smoothest motorcycles that I've ever ridden. Well, the smoothest dual sport I've ever ridden, I suppose. And even though I hadn't hit the 600 mile mark yet on the DRZ4S, which I still haven't, I noticed that there were a few things that needed some maintenance on the bike. I had to tighten the chain, I had to tighten up the clutch lever as well as the throttle cables, and I also noticed some issues that Suzuki has now released a recall on, and that's the fact that the rear master cylinder cover fasteners were so loose from the factory, or not torqued down enough from the factory, that they've loosened up, and mine actually had started to leak, which is how I noticed it. The front master cylinder also seemed to be a little bit loose. That one hadn't started to leak yet, so definitely a good thing to just go through all the fasteners on your bike every once in a while and check them out. You never know when you're going to end up finding a loose one, especially on a rather buzzy dual sport. And then, even though the shots were from quite a long ways away, we got our first glimpses of Kawasaki's new KLE 500, so we did a quick video on that. And then Happy Run sent me their G300 Pro, which is sort of a mix between something similar to a Sur-Ron and an e-bike. And as much as I love the e-bikes that I've been testing for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, I've always sort of been hopeful that I would end up getting something like this, and possibly even some more inexpensive e-dirt bikes as they become a little bit more available, which, if you haven't noticed. But the G300 Pro was really a lot of fun. I just tested it in my woods here, and because it weighs just a little bit over 100 pounds, it makes me feel like an expert dirt bike rider, since it's so easy to move around. And it certainly has some flaws. I would definitely recommend you checking out that review video before you ever think about purchasing one. But it was definitely kind of a fun step towards what I've sort of been hoping for. Then I fumbled my way through installing the Tusk D-Flex handguards on the DRZ4S, which, well, could have gone better. Well, that's not cool. The bolt here that we get with, well, just about any handguard that you purchase is going to be much smaller diameter than what Suzuki tapped these out to. Yeah, now what? Ooh, smoke coming out of the drill. And after I installed those and took the bike out for a test ride, I noticed that because I had removed the stock bar end weights, the bars started to vibrate a lot more than I was okay with.
And it's not like the bars were ever completely still or super smooth like a parallel twin would be. I mean, this is still a thumper. But if you guys remember or watched the other videos of me on this bike, that was like the number one thing that I liked about this, is that it just felt so smooth. Where now, I mean, at 60 it feels very nice, But anything else, I mean, it definitely feels vibey, and I don't think that I like that.
So I ended up borrowing the Barkbuster bar and weights that I had on the 701 Enduro to calm its bars down and put those on the 4S, and that seemed to basically get it more or less back to how it was stock. But now, of course, I had some nice protection for not only my clutch lever, brake lever, and hands, but also, in my opinion, I think it provides a little bit more protection for the side of the bike when you drop it, since they sort of stick out from the side of the bike and help keep it off of the ground a bit. And then Jason and I took his newly tuned DR650 and the DRZ4S to some ridiculously sandy ATV trails and some pretty fun flowing but still sandy single track. And I noticed that at least with the stock tires on the DRZ4S, I was feeling a lot more worn out.
Whoa, yeah, I would definitely prefer your bike on this sand. Oh!
Holy crap.
Yeah, this is about, I think, the worst of it. There's a couple bad spots, and this is definitely one of them.
I tried to ride it out, but nope.
Oh, you know what? And that punchy power, now that I think about that, I wonder if I should bring that down a bit for this stuff. Whoa, there we go. A, B. So now I'm on fuel map B for the first time, so my power is not going to be quite as punchy. And that does feel better for this. That throttle can really just kind of get away from you otherwise.
And I think that bike is certainly a great bike for somebody who really knows what they're doing and has a better set of tires on it.
I should really have a running start for this.
Yeah, so I'm backing up.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not gonna chance that. That's too much of a slow takeoff in sand. Although I don't know that I'm gonna get much of a run in the sugar here.
Yeah, powdered sugar at that. Not even granular sugar.
No. Yeah, maybe a little more. Now I wish I had your grab handles on the back.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, almost conked her out there. Yeah, this is a little bit of a high gear for this. Ooh, at least with my skill level and amount of practice that I've had. Whoa, there's a rut about halfway up you gotta look out for.
But the DR650 just feels like so much easier and more confidence inspiring of a bike to ride in comparison to the 4S. And again, that's just that nice low center of gravity and the slightly increased rake angle. Then I sort of missed the mark when Kawasaki released another bit of footage on the KLE 500, so I just barely got a video out before they then released even more information. They had the website up then at that point, and also, well, a lot more images of it. So it didn't do nearly as well as it probably would have had I been on top of things and got it out a few days before, but what are you gonna do? On the upside, they then released the MSRP of the bike, which totally blew me away, and I know a lot of people are a little bit disappointed about the fact that it seems like they designed that bike more to suit the A2 class license overseas than they did to, well, make an actual decent off-road adventure bike. But I'm still hopeful that it should have some redeeming qualities, a lot like the KLR 650 does. It's certainly not the best thing out there, but at the price point, I mean, I don't know how you can go wrong with a KLE 500. And if I can somehow scrape enough money together, maybe we'll just find out right here on the channel. A company called Hovsco sent me their Hov Beta 20, which is a foldable fat tire e-bike that has an incredibly flashy, cool looking paint job on it, but otherwise looks like it should be just any old other folding e-bike. However, it has, again, a lot like the TST R002, just the snappiest e-bike motor that I have ever tested, and it was definitely a fun bike to ride. A company called Rever sent me their V5 e-bike, which is sort of like a moped-style e-bike. They seem a little bit more like a BMX-style e-bike to me, but that was definitely an interesting bike and had an okay amount of power, nothing too spectacular, but it did have cruise control on it, which is really kind of a neat feature. Oh, and it also had some Kenda tires on it, which were the grippiest set of e-bike tires I think that I've ever tested. And then MacFox sent me their X7, which has a lower seat height and much, much fatter tires than any of the other bikes that I've tested from them in the past, and really made that bike, well, feel a lot more like a motorcycle or maybe even a supermoto when kind of leaning around the corners. And not too long after testing that one, they also sent me their X2, which is their sort of top of the line e-bike with hydraulic brakes and suspension front and rear. And that one definitely seemed to have the most power out of, I think, any MacFox bike that I've tested, other than maybe the very first one, which was the X1. And even though those motors didn't really even come close to the massive torque that bikes like the TST R002 and Hovsco Beta did, they're just, I don't know, always ending up being a bike that I really have a lot of fun on. We also swapped the Tusk Universal Windscreen out for something with a little bit more shape to it that I purchased myself off of Amazon, hoping that it would sort of make the DR650 Adventure build look a little bit more like I wanted it to. And then we took that bike out on a nice long ride to talk a bit about why it wasn't really coming together the way that I had hoped it would, but still have a lot of hope and a lot of ideas to get it to the point where I want it to be. And originally, back when I bought the XR650L and traded the KLR for the DR650, I thought that I was only going to have both of those bikes for a couple years and then get rid of them. But now I'm thinking that there's just way too much to be done on them. And since I'm doing all of this other stuff, I just really don't have the time to do it all in any sort of timely manner. So I'm just going to end up dragging those builds out. I hope you guys don't mind too much. That just means we'll have a lot more content on those bikes, which I'm honestly pretty excited about. I think there's really a lot that can be done with those, and I'm excited to do it and bring you guys along on the ride. And then just a couple days later, I took the DRZ4S out on essentially that same ride to talk a bit about how the 4S compared to the DR650 in real life, since back the year before I had taken the DR650 out and kind of compared it to what I remembered about the original DRZ400 that I owned back in the day for my first dual sport. We also took the DR650 on some single track, and I talked about how much I love that bike. And it seems like a lot of you guys seem to think that when I put out videos titled like the DRZ4S comparison one was why I like the DRZ4S more than the DR650. It seems like some people think that I'm saying that I do just flat out like it more. It's a video about the reasons that I like it more. That doesn't mean that I like the DRZ4S more or that I don't like the DR650. My job is to compare these bikes and tell you what I like about them and what I don't like about them. And if everything was just all roses, then, well, I think that would just mean that I wasn't being completely honest. And if I'm not going to be honest about this, I don't know why I would do it in the first place, because that's certainly not going to help anyone who doesn't actually own one of these bikes. And if you're watching these videos because you'd like me to make you feel better about your motorcycle, then maybe just try to tune into the things that I say that are positive about them, because there's plenty of good stuff that I have to say about every single bike that I've got in the garage. And I've heard from a lot of you guys that you really appreciate my sort of level-headed approach to this type of content. So huge thanks to all you guys who have let me know that you appreciate what I'm doing. And then not too long after, Jason and I headed out with his performance-built DR650 and my adventure-built XR650L, and we did some bike swapping both out on the pavement on the higher speed roads to talk a bit about how those bikes performed out there.
Yeah, this does have more pull. Wow. Do you think so too, or not? Not so much.
Yeah. I was trying to find the right gear. I'm like, oh, I think I am in the right gear. It just doesn't pull as hard.
Of course, that, you know, my XR is still stock, so once that's upgraded a bit, maybe the difference between this bike and that bike will be a little bit less. But right now, between this modded DR and that XR, this DR feels a lot quicker. Yeah, it just rips when you hit the throttle. Noticing that I'm definitely a lot colder on this one. I had all my vents open and I was feeling great on that bike because I didn't even have the heated gear on when I was riding it. I was totally fine, but now I could definitely do with some heated gear.
Yeah, definitely makes a difference.
We also did some 0 to, I suppose, 45 testing, which, well, is always a little bit difficult on the XR.
3, 2, 1, go. Whoa! Where'd the ground go?
This thing picked it up more than I thought it would. But you're still pulling away then, even though I got it back down.
Do you want to switch quick? 3, 2, 1, go. Whoa! I think I finally got a good launch that time, but it was too good. I just pulled the wheel up.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
Well, they're both fun. We can say that, right?
Yeah. And then we had just an absolute blast exploring on the sort of nasty ATV, UTV, and Jeep trails that they've got at the Tigerton Off-Road Park. And finally, we did our best to make it through the 8-mile single track. I don't think we made it more than a couple miles, but we definitely had an awesome time on those machines. And as always, I was incredibly impressed how these giant monsters that were designed back before I was born can really do just an excellent job on everything from highway to single track. It was also really just kind of fun to see how a bike built strictly for performance and one built strictly for comfort compared on everything from the road to the nasty single track. I also did an in-depth sort of overview and review of the new Tusk Adventure toolkit, which they sent me to take a look at and to share with you guys, and I sort of compared that to the kit that I had put together sort of on my own with components that they had sent me and some other stuff that I had purchased on my own. My dad and I also took the XR650L and the T7 up to Harrison Hills on a long test ride where we compared the bikes both on the pavement and on the trail, and those videos I have not gotten to editing yet, so those will come out in 2026. And I sort of jumped ahead after the DR versus XR video and posted, or actually I guess I suppose I posted it before then, but we got a bunch of snow sort of in the meantime when I was catching up with all the footage that I had got over the summer. And I took the DRZ4S out to kind of get a snow depth check. And the first time that I took all of them out in the snow, we had just a little bit when I was just sort of warming all the bikes up and trying to keep the batteries from dying while they were sitting in the garage. The DRZ4S with the tires that don't seem to do very well on any other terrain actually, and I guess maybe it was more the geometry of the bike or the lightweight, I don't really know, but that bike seemed to do far better than the DR650 or the 701 did with the D Sports, which I was kind of surprised about. But when I took it out on that day, it was definitely a bit of a struggle, and I haven't been riding any of the bikes since. I did get out on the sled for a nice long ride, but of course that was released in 2026 as well. And because I know a lot of you guys don't like the super long hour-plus videos, I sort of cut apart the DR650 versus XR650 video and put it in segments for the road comparison, the off-road comparison, and the single track comparison. And I think if I can find the time, I might do that with a couple of the other videos that are extremely long and I think could be cut down and put into more bite-sized chunks for those of you who don't like the really long videos. And that more or less wraps up 2025. There's been some other stuff that I've been sort of working on behind the scenes here, which you guys will start to see in videos in 2026, like the little bike that I've got sitting back behind me there, as well as some other stuff that I'll be doing some testing on. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've got a ton of parts sitting around from Rocky Mountain ATV for both the XR and the DR650, along with some other stuff that I've picked up along the way. And I'm pretty excited to get back in testing those bikes. I think need to get to putting out some content on the DRZ4S while that bike is still new. I feel sort of silly that I didn't spend more time on that bike, but like I said, I've just been kind of having a hard time figuring out how much time to actually put into these videos. I want them to look professional and polished and be easy and fun to watch, but a lot of times then that comes at the expense of, well, not putting much content out and not getting a whole lot done. So I don't know, I've got to figure out a way to sort of pick up the pace. I've also really been trying over the course of the last year to spend a lot more time with my family. So when they ask me to do something, rather than saying, no, I've got to work, I've been trying really hard to just put work down and spend as much time with my kids as I can when they're still little, because they're only going to be little for a very short period of time and they're already both getting so big. I've also really been struggling with, I guess, what you'd probably call health issues. I think because I'm so stressed out about work and because I'm just sort of always giving myself a much harder time about, well, everything than I should be. I'm just really, I think, feeling kind of worn down, and I just never feel like I want to get out and do anything. I would just much rather just sit at my computer, and obviously that makes rides pretty hard to do, and it makes working in the garage pretty hard to do. I've also noticed that anytime I get sick, I'm really just down for kind of a long time. So I think I really just need to work on my mental health, I suppose, and I think that will make everything much better. And I've been trying, but man, I've just really been struggling, especially towards the end of the year here. I was sick before Christmas for like a week, and definitely took a decent amount of time off of work to hopefully heal up before the holidays. And then during the holidays, I'm not exactly sure what it was that I ate, but I've actually struggled with this a bit in the past. It's been a while, but I woke up Christmas morning with my face all swollen up, and I've been struggling with hives or some sort of allergic reaction basically since then, kind of on and off. So I'm not exactly sure what I've got going on. I guess I'm a bit of a mess, and I suppose I'm just not as young as I used to be anymore. So this all is just a little bit harder. And since I've been basically only allowing myself to work on work during the work week and work hours, that means that I'm not getting anything done at night or on the weekends, because that time is reserved for my family. And I'm definitely glad that I made that decision, but especially with all of the time that I spend meticulously doing whatever it is that I'm doing, well, it doesn't really leave a whole lot of time to actually get anything done. So I've really been struggling with that, and I'm hoping that I can get past that and end 2026 in a lot better position than I feel like I'm in right now. But to be completely honest, I feel incredibly thankful to God for putting me in this amazing position and giving me the opportunity to do this. I just hope that I don't fail at it and waste this amazing opportunity, because like I said earlier, this is just something that I have wanted, I mean, just absolutely forever. And I'm so thankful to all of you guys who have been supporting me and watching. I really hope that I can do a good job in 2026 and continue to do this in years to come. So thanks for watching. Take care. Stay safe. Stay swanky. Get out there and enjoy this beautiful world God created for us to explore and enjoy any chance you get. And if you can't do that right now, here's some more videos to check out. In the meantime, we'll catch you guys on the next one.